Welcome in, everybody, to another edition of the Football Friday podcast. Matt Catrillo, Alex Kazora, and Tyler D-Jock here with you this week. Ian Hunter tied up. He will not be able to join us this week as we kind of give you a little bit of bonus episode, if you will, as the 2017 NFL Draft begins tomorrow night at 8 o'clock in the city of brotherly love. Can't wait for it. Been seeing all the pictures, and the stage looks great, and we're a little over 24 hours away now from the start of the 2017 draft. Guys, really excited. We had a great draft show last week. What's going on, Alex? What's happening?
Hey, guys. This time, a little over 24 hours from now, like I've been saying, we'll be able to talk about things that actually happened instead of just our speculation, and it's an exciting time of the year.
And the speculation continuing. We got plenty of that to talk about in this episode, getting you ready for tomorrow night. D-Jock, what's going on?
Not much. This is exciting. It's like Alex's second Christmas here, first Christmas. I said each week, very interesting draft. Other than Myles Garrett going one, this is a very, very wide open draft. A lot of trades could happen. I know Control loves the fancy trades. But other than that, this is one of the most interesting drafts I could think of, ever in my lifetime, I guess.
Well, we think Myles Garrett is the consensus number one overall pick, but we'll ultimately find out what the Cleveland Browns say about that in about a little over 24 hours from now, tomorrow, from the draft in Philly. So, plenty to talk about, guys. And, of course, for those who missed the draft show last week, it is pinned on our Twitter page at FF Podcast 1. You can also find it in the show archives on Football Friday on our new YouTube page as well. So, make sure you check that out in case you missed it. We'll have that up for the rest of the week as the draft goes on for the rest of the weekend. And we'll, of course, have this episode available as well once that's up and posted. So, first, guys, before we get into what we've been hearing about, a lot of crazy speculation and allegations against some top guys in the draft. Before we get to that, first, some Steelers news to talk to you about, as Martavis Bryant has been reinstated conditionally by the NFL, but still his immediate future, as far as the regular season goes, still is a question mark. He can immediately rejoin the team. He can participate in practice, training camp, preseason games, but then he won't be allowed to go into the regular season until he proves that he's continuing his drug rehabilitation in Pittsburgh, and that's been going well and things like that. So that is the conditional part of this reinstatement. But, Alex, I'm sure it's still good to at least have Martavis Bryant back with the team. And how do you see this playing out? First of all, overall, with his still immediate future, still a question mark as far as the regular season goes, and where do you think this affects the Steelers' draft plans at this point?
Well, as long as he stays on the straight and narrow and do what he's doing, training hard and staying clean, he'll get reinstated week one. It's just kind of the NFL's doing this as a reminder to Bryant that, we want to make sure you get through the offseason. There's going to be a lot of downtime, after mini camps and OTAs wrap up when you're in the summer months before training camp, or you're not going to be with the team. You're going to be by yourself, and you want to prove that you're making good decisions and hanging out with the right people and not falling back into that that lifestyle. So, but as long as he stays clean, then he'll be reinstated before the regular season. He can participate in training camp and OTAs and the preseason, so no issues there. But I'm excited. He's really, you can't guarantee he's going to stay on the straight and narrow. I don't know what's in his mindset right now. You never know what can happen. But he seemed to really turn his life around. He dedicated himself to training, which, as he said in the past, the first time he's really ever taken training seriously. He's bulked up. He's up to about 230 pounds now. He came into the combine, for reference, at 211 pounds. There was a clip yesterday of him running a 4.2740.
I did see that. That's amazing.
He ran 4.42 at the combine. Now, to be fair, this was a hand time just to do. But regarding, I believe that he's running faster. If he's actually training and conditioning himself and putting on good muscle, then he's probably running faster than what he did before. It's going to make him more physical downfield in that catch point. So that's very exciting. I really didn't expect it. The announcement before the draft, I thought the NFL was going to continue to drag their feet, so it was obviously surprising and very good news. As for the draft plans, I still don't discount them drafting a receiver relatively high in the third or fourth round. It's a position they evaluate best. It's still difficult to trust Bryant long term. And as the Steelers proved last year, your wide receiver depth can erode pretty quickly with the injury to Sammy Coates and Bryant's suspension and not really having that true number two receiver. So I could still see a Josh Reynolds and a Matt Collins, Kenny Galladay, somewhere in that third, fourth round.
How about even a Chris Godwin, I think, maybe in the second round? Do you think that could be someone that they can target?
Well, that's what I had in my mock on Monday, but that was pre-Bryant reinstatement. I think the second might be stretching it a bit now. But, I don't rule anything out. I think bottom line is they're going to look at the receivers still relatively early, or some sort of really athletic tight end. And Evan Ingram might be picking up steam at pick 30. Who knows?
Now, before all of this happened to Martavis Bryant, this was a guy on field, Alex, that was obviously really fast and was a potent receiver for that Steelers offense. And you add to what they have in Le'Veon Bell now and Antonio Brown, of course. And this could be another a really dangerous Steelers offense. And now that he has that size and perhaps even more speed, now that he's been really harping on making sure that he's training harder, that this could be a really nice addition for the Steelers to have back. But, of course, you still don't know about his future, and I would agree if I'm the Steelers, I'm still thinking about drafting a receiver relatively high until Martavis Bryant fully proves that he can be a guy that they can count on going forward. D-Jock, your thoughts on this?
Sorry, my mic muted. It'd be interesting. I mean, obviously, the Steelers have sorely missed him, and obviously he's one of the top wide receivers in the league, so it's great to have him back, and maybe on a personal level, like on a person level, and hopefully he's got all his teammates figured out, and he can get back on the straight and narrow here, and help. I mean, it just makes the offense even more potent. I mean, I wouldn't totally rule out them drafting a wide receiver, and maybe not in second, third, and maybe like a mid-level guy just in case something happens. I mean, you definitely got to prepare for that. But no, this makes the Steelers offense even more scary than it already is. And, they're always the odds-on favorite every year to make a deep playoff run. And maybe this year, Big Ben doesn't have that many years left here. So hopefully, they got a short window here of another year, 2 years, to make something happen.
And as we've talked about before, this is a deep receiver draft class, and the Steelers are in position where now that they have Bryant back, they can still focus on some other needs and maybe the first round or two, and then they can get a guy like you mentioned, like a Josh Reynolds or Chris Godwin, maybe even though it's possibly a bit of a stretch, guys like that can be a good fit and then can maybe be counted on should Martavis Bryant fail at trying to get himself back in order. But the Steelers, I think, are in a good spot as far as receiver goes because you either get a guy like Martavis Bryant back in addition to whomever they pick up in the first couple of rounds, or you get another quality guy at receiver in one of those first couple of rounds as well to go with what you already have in Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown, guys like that. So I think the Steelers are in a good spot right now at that spot going into the draft. So let's talk about some of these prospects, guys, and we've seen it's been a tough week for some of these top guys that are supposed to go in the first round with new allegations that are coming out against them. The most notable one is the USA Today sports report yesterday of Ohio State cornerback Arion Conley being accused of rape in a Cleveland hotel on April 9th. And then you have Reuben Foster and Jabril Peppers, who both came back with diluted samples from their drug test results from the combine. So a lot of stuff coming out. And then, of course, too, what we're going to talk about, the Robert Klemko in-depth report about Dalvin Cook's personal life as well. And I tweeted this out late last night after I saw it come out. Peter King tweeted it out, and I got a chance to read through it again today. And this is some pretty damaging stuff that's in this report. And again, if you go through it, a lot of it's not on him. Some of it's not on him per se. It's just the way he grew up. He had a really tough childhood, but a lot of the stuff he put on himself. So we're gonna get into all these different incidents piece by piece here. But just from an overall standpoint, I'm gonna start with Alex on this and throwing out just this general question: is I can't remember a draft, and I know every year we have this time of year, you talk about the La'el Collins thing that happened last year. You always have stuff that comes out right before the draft happens, whether it's smoke or not. But the fact that you've had a lot, and with a lot of these things too being on the serious side, you're going to have some drug things that happen here and there. We see that every year with guys like Foster and Peppers. But Alex, have you ever seen it at this point in the draft where you've seen so many different of these character issues come out on so many top guys in a draft class?
Sure, I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment and say this is the wildest in terms of that perspective. Just last year we had Laramie Tunsil in a gas mask on the day of the draft, an hour before it kicked off. That was, I think, pretty insane, where there's no time to figure out what's going on. There's no ability for NFL teams to really reach out and find the fact and fiction of that. La'el Collins 2 years ago, who was accused of a first-round prospect that got dropped out of the draft entirely. So we've seen it before. Not that it doesn't make things any less crazy or any less serious or not worth talking about. Peppers, Foster, it's tough. They're not failed tests for a positive drug test. They're diluted. Just, as you pointed that out, and I'm glad you clarified that, Matt, because that's important. Not a lot of people are, but those are questions that are going to have to be answered. With Conley, the tough thing for that is just the inability to vet that if you're a team, because teams probably knew about Foster and Pepper's situation, their drug tests. Conley, they didn't know, and he's not meeting with the police until Monday, so he doesn't even have a chance to clear his name until after the draft. If you're a team, you got to figure out fact and fiction, and there's not a whole lot of facts out right now. He's not been charged. It's just an allegation. That's important to point out. But that's tough to draft a guy like that in the first round. And his first question from the media is, "What's up with with this rape allegation?" That's tough. That's tough for a team to justify.
Yeah, it's terrible timing on all parties' part here, as far as that's concerned. As far as fact finding, and you mentioned not being able to talk to the police on Monday. That's really brutal for him, for a guy that's supposed to go top 10, maybe top 15 in the first round. D-Jock, your thoughts on all of this character issue stories coming out all at once here?
I mean, the Conley thing, that's pretty serious. That's something that's going to probably definitely drop him down to, out of the first round. I don't see him probably going the first round now, because either way, even if it's false, obviously if it's true, he's going to jail. Even if it's false, he'll still have that stigma attached to him. But the other guys, Reuben Foster, Terrell Peppers, again, those aren't failed drug tests. As Alex said, they're just diluted. So it could have been if they drank too much water and they were too hydrated and it wasn't enough, urine in there to take a test. Making a difference. I think Peppers already is like a late first round, early second round guy, so it probably won't affect him. Foster's probably still going to go, top 10, top 15. And Foster's not dropping past 15, definitely. But Peppers may, drop in the first couple picks the second round. But I don't put too much stock into that.
It's interesting you mentioned that, D-Jock, because you're seeing a lot of reports now that Foster may not go until the late first round. So we'll see. And Dalvin Cook, we've heard now, is definitely a possible second round pick. Who knows what's going to happen? This is why the draft is great, because you don't know how things are going to fall here. But
Katrina,
yes, sir.
Real quick, tell me about I didn't read the Klemko article. Tell me what's in there about Cook.
Oh, it's a long piece. It goes through how he grew up and how basically he moved out of his mom's house to take, because his mom was a single parent at the time, and it was him and his other siblings. So he moved to this guy to this other woman's house named Miss Betty, who was like this really well known person around his area in near Miami, Florida. And she took in like some of his cousins and other of his friends that basically were having troubles at home, and kind of raised them and to try to raise them in a different way. And then he did a lot of bad things in high school, or middle school rather. He was like accused of shoplifting, and he got in trouble with the law numerous times, and kind of settled down in high school. And then in college, he had a couple other issues happen. He had issues with actually tying up dogs. That was one issue we had. He pled not guilty to being an associate of someone of I think it was a sexual allegation. I have to go back and look through it. That was in northern Florida, and then he was accused but pled not guilty to punching a woman outside of a Tallahassee bar. So there's a lot of baggage here with Dalvin Cook. It just seems to be one thing after another. And Ian pointed this out on the show last week, talking about, one time you could be one thing, then you repeat it a second time, then third time you got an issue. And it seems to be what this is now. It seems, again, as I've said before, and Klemko puts it out nicely, is some of these things come from a tough background, that he came from a tough upbringing, but at the same time, you got to learn from your mistakes, and it doesn't seem like he did that until after what happened in the what allegedly happened in the Tallahassee bar, when he allegedly punched a woman, pled not guilty to it again. Want to make that clear. And then he had the big year last year with Florida State before it comes out. So let me ask you this:
you had him as a top 5 overall player.
I did
before, and you were advocating for Cook, and you had Joe Mixon off your board. After reading this, how has your opinion, if it has at all, of Cook changed?
It's changed dramatically. I said this out when I tweeted out the story last night. to me, when you now that concrete evidence is out there, and that was my big point on the show last week, is now that it's out there, this clearly shows a guy that just hasn't learned from his mistakes. And so when I'm evaluating that as an NFL team, again, what we talk about availability is being your number one ability for being considered a top prospect for an NFL team. And if you're constantly getting in trouble with the law and not showing remorse, then how can I trust you going forward? And I think that's the biggest question with these group of guys that we're talking about here. Now, obviously, this is more serious than others, and same with Garyon Conley. Should those allegations become fact and not an allegation per se? So yeah, he's down, and with Joe Mixon, I have them basically neck and neck because Mixon, of course, has a little bit more of egregious tape out there as we've talked about before, but he's almost in the same playing field as Dalvin Cook right now because there's just so much outside baggage that I don't know if you can put full trust in these guys. So basically, if I'm looking at these 4 running backs that I talked about last week, Alex, I got McCaffrey 1 and Fournette 2, and then the other 2, I don't know if I touch at all at this point.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say last week, is that Cook and Mixon are relatively comparable in terms of their and that's why I had trouble separating, you being high on Cook and being totally against Joe Mixon.
Right, but again, now that concrete evidence is out there, then that's why I have them both down. And I think either if you talk about from the Eagles standpoint or anybody from a running back standpoint in that first round, McCaffrey's there, you grab him. Fournette, if he's there, you grab him. I wouldn't touch the other 2 at all, just because there's a lot of unknowns and baggage and things like that as far as Dalvin Cook goes. D-Jock, are you in agreement, I guess, as far as... Oh, actually, I shouldn't say that, because you would draft Joe Mixon, right? Did I have that right last time?
Yeah, I would. As, again, we've said this week and last week, Cook and Mixon both have their off-the-field issues. Mixon, I guess, was a little more high profile, but Cook had that same thing again. It may drop them a little bit, but, on the field talent, Cook could probably go in the first round. Mixon may drop to the second, maybe third or so. But both of them will definitely get drafted, and definitely get drafted, no later than the early third round. But I see Cook probably definitely go in the first round. Mixon probably beginning the middle of the second round, or maybe even the first. But both of them are great talents, and hopefully stuff off the field is behind them. But again, I've seen many reports have had teams dropping both players off the board completely. But again, the age of that, it takes one team to fall in love with you. So I think there's one team that's gonna risk it per se and draft one of them, and then hopefully it can fix them.
So if you're the Eagles, D-Jock, you're okay with drafting one of these 2 guys despite their troubles in the past?
Well, fit-wise, I'd probably take Cook over Mixon. But it takes a really strong organization to draft a guy. I think the Eagles are one of the strong up there, not the strongest. Like a team like the Patriots, they're not going to draft a team like the Patriots, a team like the Steelers. A team that's a very good owner and a very good general manager to kind of push some of the media stuff aside. But I think some teams gonna not take a flyer per se, but definitely gonna take them. So they're not gonna get undrafted. But again, you have somebody like La'el Collins who went undrafted, who was like a first round talent, picked up by the Cowboys. So I could probably eating my words come next week, but I just think that they're too good of talents to not draft.
See, I think culture is one thing, and it's very important. And you mentioned those couple of teams, D-Jock, where they can have that great culture and try and turn these guys away from their past and make them focus on football and straightening out their life and things like that. But they still have to make those decisions themselves. And just from Dalvin Cook alone, you're not seeing that at all based on what we're seeing on the evidence that he's learning from those mistakes. And he was with a pretty decent program in Jimbo Fisher and Florida State, and who had a pretty good culture. And he didn't really prove that he can learn from that culture and kind of turn away from those things. So if I'm the Eagles, I don't touch either one of them. So, but it'll be interesting to see who does, in fact, take that chance and if they can hold those guys together. But you mentioned La'el Collins, D-Jock, and what happened to him and him falling completely out of the draft. And we have Garyon Conley here, who's got this allegation hanging over his head. And Alex, you mentioned that he's not going to be able to clear his name till at least Monday when he meets with the police. Can you, in fact, I'm going to start with you on this, Alex, see Garyon Conley dropping completely out of the draft, or if not, how far do you think he will fall?
I don't know. I mean, I don't want to give the cop-out answer, but it's really impossible to say because it depends on teams' comfort. It depends on what teams are finding out. Obviously, they're talking to his agent right now. It's such a murky situation. I think it's really tough to justify taking him in the first round. I think that to do that, to be that face of the draft class, and then to be peppered with those questions you're dealing with, is tough, and that happened with Collins. Collins was never. I don't think he was never charged, and he never, at the time, he never ended up being charged, and was definitely innocent of that. But the perception of it and the risk of it totally tainted his draft stock. So I have my 7th-round major mock draft going right now. I bumped Conley down to the 2nd round. It may be farther than that, though. He may not get drafted until day 3, but it's going to depend on what each individual team thinks and says and what they're finding out. That's going to vary from team to team, what the comfort level is. So I think he will get drafted. I don't think it's going to be a Collins situation, but I don't think it's going to be in the first round.
I agree that teams shouldn't justify drafting him in the first round either just because of that risk. So if I'm the Eagles or any team quarterback needy, I don't touch him, especially in the first round. I don't know if I even touch him at all, to be honest with you, but I do think he will get drafted somewhere day 2 or day 3 just because I think teams have also learned by the fact of what happened in the La'el Collins situation. Now, of course, every situation is going to be different, but I definitely don't see him going day 1. I wouldn't be surprised if he falls till day 3. I think latest he goes day 3. I don't think he falls completely out of the draft either, but if that does happen to occur where he falls completely out of the draft, I'm not totally surprised by that either just because, again, there's not a whole lot of facts out there right now about this other than the USA Today report. D-Jock, saying, I would imagine what your answer is going to be on this, just the fact that we talked about what you do in the case of Dalvin Cook and Joe Mixon, but knowing the little that you know right now about Garyon Conley, if you're an NFL team, if you're the Eagles especially, that's cornerback needy, do you take him and when do you take him?
I mean, again, and Conley's different here. I mean, it's a really deep cornerback draft. I mean, Conley was projected he had to be a first round, early 2nd round. I mean, and not to say that cornerbacks are a dime a dozen here, but I think this definitely hurts him. I think, as all of us alluded to, it's too soon before a draft to clear his name, and I think he'll get drafted, but I think it's probably not going to be till the last day, till the 4th to 7th round. But again, my eraser phrase takes one team to fall in love with him. The team could take a shot at him, but I mean, I think it's really risky right now because the allegations are so soon, and that's definitely something that's ongoing. And he could get he could never play it down. Could get charged and go right to jail and mess everything up. And so I think it's too big of a risk to do that now. So I mean, I see him get drafted. I do, but probably in the 3rd day, the 4th to 7th round.
All right, so we'll have to see how that plays out. And finally, guys, with guys like Reuben Foster and Jabril Peppers with the diluted samples, let me ask this from the Steelers' perspective, Alex, because I know we talked about the last couple of weeks or so how much speculation there is of the Steelers linking themselves to Jabril Peppers. If you're Pittsburgh, do you still go after him? Should he be there at number 30, or do you pass at this point?
I mean, my personal thoughts on Peppers, I really wouldn't have taken him on a personal level, even without the failed drug test.
Sure.
I imagine it's not going to affect him too much. I'm sure teams have known about this for a while now. I'm sure Peppers and his agency has explained things to teams, and just knowing that Peppers had really no off-the-field problems before, no history of drug tests that we know of, or any other really character concerns, and that he's got a great personality and a great attitude, I think teams are going to be more sympathetic to his story. And what his story is that he drank a bunch of water, he's had cramping issues, and he's going to work out on Sunday and Monday at the combine, so he drank all the water he could, and that diluted the sample. I think the teams are going to be more willing to give Peppers a pass than, say, Reuben Foster.
D-Jock, what do you think about this? I know, especially in your case, you're a big Reuben Foster fan. If you were the Eagles, you would take him at 14.
No, I think definitely, as I said earlier, I think Reuben Foster's not going past 15. I think he's a top 15 talent. One of the teams in the top 15 will draft him, or someone will come get him. He's a franchise changer. He's a great player. As I said earlier, I don't think this diluted sample changes much. I mean, and again, we don't know the reason. Maybe it's because, of the nursing of the thing at the hospital. It kind of, is a second tick against him there. I think that he's just too great of a talent, and that's somebody that, you would kind of risk it for, someone of that pedigree.
The thing with Foster, though, is that there's repeated problems in this pre-draft process. I don't think anyone has had a worse pre-draft process than Reuben Foster in terms of just multiple things. The combine thing, which we agreed wasn't a huge deal at the time. Shoulder injury history, this diluted drug test. I mean, it's just repeated things, and he hasn't played it down in the NFL. So that's what scares me. I disagree, D-Jock. I think he's going to fall out of the top 15. And in my mock draft, personally, I'm not going in the first round at all. And I love Reuben Foster on the field, but I just feel like there's so much risk there that teams are going to shy away. I do wonder internally, and I'll wonder out loud, that if he falls to Pittsburgh in 30, would they take a chance? It would align a potential need area, and the talent would be immense. So just a thought out there.
That would be interesting. Now, how would he fit as far as like his? Do you think the Steelers could try him out at outside linebacker, move him away, or do you think they'd keep him at inside linebacker?
Inside, then he'll bump out Vince Williams. I mean, that's pretty easy
Okay.
fit, I think.
Okay, I was just curious there. But getting back to what you're saying about Reuben Foster, Alex, I completely agree. I don't think he goes in the top 15 at all. I think at best he goes in the late first round. And if I'm the Eagles, I'm not touching him. I already put out my sense. I'm not a big fan of him on a tape level either. And now the fact that you have all this coming against him, you mentioned it's been a horrendous pre-draft process for him. And I still stick to the stance that what happened at the hospitals, I'm not going to totally bring out against him, but I'm just saying if you're the Eagles evaluating these guys with that have now these diluted samples and possible drug test issues, you need to remember what happened and how much your season was affected when Lane Johnson came out of the lineup last year. You only won one or two games after he left, and he was obviously one of your top guys of the year. And now he's one false move away from being out of the league for 2 years. So again, we talked about before, and I stress this really importantly, is that availability is your number one ability, and if you can't keep clean, then that's one strike against you. But the second thing is when you see guys fail drug tests, not in the NFL but all of sports. Number one, it shows selfishness because you're only trying to make yourself better. Sure, you may be trying to say if you make yourself better, you make your team better and trying to justify it that way. But there's more. You risk being a bad case for your team than helping your team, because if you get caught and using these samples, you're gonna be out of the lineup and you hurt your team for in this case for the NFL 4 games first time offense, as we saw with Lane Johnson last year. A 10 game is a second time offense, and then the third time you're out for 2 years. So what help are you? What good are you to the team if you can't do that way? And plus, you don't show that you're smart either. Because if you're trying to still take these illegal samples and trying to kind of rig the system a little bit and work around it and not take these pills or whatever when you know that the test is coming, and then either you still take them or you don't know what's what or whatever, you don't show me that you're a smart person either. I mean, this just being able to follow these types of rules just shows those 3 types of mental and character abilities that the NFL teams so strongly, talk about and want out of their players. So the fact that you have 2 guys here now, Jarrell Peppers, as you mentioned, Alex, is a little bit of a different situation, so I give him somewhat of a pass, but it still has me that concerned. But Foster's story is this classic example where I can see this, if the Eagles were to take him at 14 or anybody were to take him at 14, where this can blow up in their face just like the Lane Johnson situation has a little bit. So if I'm the Eagles, you better have that in the back of your mind when you're thinking about taking a guy like a Reuben Foster, whether it's at 14 or maybe in the second round should he fall that far.
I wonder who's having a worse week right now, some of these draft prospects or some of the members of the stations that are going to be covering them. ESPN, I don't mean to go on the tangent here, but I just looked it up while you were rambling. Did you see these layoffs, Catrillo, at ESPN?
Yes, I did. It's been a rough week for them. Ed Water and I tweeted this out on FF Podcast 1 on Twitter. Ed Water's been one of those layoffs, and I think that's just a total disgrace. I get things happen. I'm in a situation at work right now where money's tight. I mean, just the way the business is overall right now. But it's the fact that he was one of those guys that got let go. To me, I think is a total disgrace.
Yeah, Danny Cannell. I'm not a big Danny Cannell fan, but he just got elected. There, D-Jock. I heard they're scaling back Ryan Russillo's role. I don't know if you saw that, and obviously Russillo and Cannell had their show together after SCP. So
right.
Exactly, but it's a lot of big names. That John Butchergross is on Daniel.
Well, I heard Butchergross might be staying. There was
but still, these are some pretty.
Yeah. Right.
And we did see that coming.
Yeah. But still, this is scary.
Basically, the entire NHL staff. It's not Gary Melrose is gone.
Right, and that didn't surprise me, of course, because ESPN's dropped their NHL coverage almost altogether.
True. But it's very, again, we'll bring it back to football. It's very scary in this day and age, especially like three of us, we're all journalists, all media people, and ESPN, the granddad of them all, is cutting back. What's that mean for the smaller stuff? But so.
Anyway, yeah, just an aside there.
And Reuben Foster, in fact, Alex, was on NFL Live yesterday, and I thought he did an okay job. I know getting on national TV, it's a little bit, obviously can be a little bit different for those guys, but I thought it was all right. But yeah, you're totally right about that, Alex. Just because I'm curious how that'll be handled by ESPN and all the media as far as that's concerned, going forward here in the draft. But it's just been a rough couple of days as far as those guys are concerned. And we'll see where in terms of they fall come tomorrow night. So other news around the league, Adrian Peterson to the Saints on a 2-year deal. Expected salary is at $3.25 million, which is less than Mark Ingram. So from a football standpoint, how do you see this running back rotation working, and do you like the move overall? Let me start with D-Jock on this.
No, it's very interesting. I mean, again, you take a flyer on Peterson. He's not going to be a every down back. I mean, Ingram's not really a change-up back per se. So that's an interesting thing. I mean, it's more weapons for Sean Payton to use. And, at first I thought that this meant that they were out of the Christian McCaffrey sweepstakes. But I think McCaffrey is still very much in play and a guy they could definitely probably take there. I mean, because he can play the slide going backfield, he can play out wide. So, I mean, can you imagine, the field with Peterson, Ingram, and McCaffrey out wide there? That would be, hell for a defense trying to defend that. That would be absolutely insane. But again, the Saints will have to score 60 points because their defense needs a lot of work still. But I mean, that would be an insane offense, absolutely insane. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how much this helps the Saints, to be honest with you. Just because, again, you have a guy who's 32 years old. I get on paper this looks scary, but if I were the Saints, I wouldn't have touched him. You have a guy in Ingram who's a good power back as well. He's coming off a career year. And if you were to add a guy like a McCaffrey in the second round, I think just having those two alone and not have to worry about giving a high-profile guy who's 32 years old trying to give him some carries, I just think I just don't really like the move. I don't really understand the move from the Saints standpoint as well. And just because the age is obviously the number one factor, but just trying to fit him in with Ingram, I don't see how that's going to work. I can see this being more of a problem than a reward per se for the Saints. What are your thoughts, Alex?
I don't know it's going to be a problem. I just don't think you're going to get much of a benefit. I think AP's pretty much done. He's 32, coming up from meniscus last year. The contract, I think, tells a story about how little money he got, compared to what other backs are getting. I just don't think it's going to move the needle too much. I think they're going to find out pretty quickly that he's just an average back at best right now with an injury history. And the dude's 32. He's got a lot of mileage on him. Yeah,
definitely. And the other, of course, big running back, it looks like Marshawn Lynch is officially heading to Oakland as they have agreed to deal. And he's just pending a physical, and then the Seahawks and Raiders will work out a trade. And we talked about this before. I'll start with you, Alex. You're still on board with the move for Oakland?
Yeah, I love the move. Lynch behind that Raiders offensive line, a power guy versus behind maybe the best offensive line in football, at least one of the nastiest. Assembly and Gabe Jackson and Rodney Hudson and Donald Penn. That's perfect. I mean, Lynch ran behind the Seahawks' terrible offensive line. I can't wait to see what he does in Oakland.
D-Jock?
I apologize. What's the question? I'm thinking about this. What are you guys talking about?
Looks like Marshawn Lynch officially heading to Oakland.
Oh, yes. I mean, again, that's somebody else, kind of like Peterson, a guy, that's kind of 30-plus through there, hasn't played in a year or so. I'm sure he's still in very good shape, and the Raiders are taking a shot on him. I'm honestly not sure how that's going to pan out. I really have no rhyme or reason either way. Hope, again, the Raiders taking a shot. If it works, it works. If not, then I don't know. But, Marshawn Lynch is a freak of nature and a very interesting guy, and especially with their pending move. I think it really drummed up a lot more interest there, so maybe kind of a marketing move too. I'm sure it's on the field thing too. But very interesting. I mean, the Raiders, had a great year last year, and was kind of cut short by Carr going down. So hopefully, Carr comes back healthy and better than ever, and the Raiders can make a little run here.
I think, no question, this was a marketing PR move with the impending move of the Raiders to Vegas. No question about that at all. Because when you look at this from an on-field standpoint, I get they're running back needy, but trying to bring a guy back who, to be fair, may be a little bit fresher than a guy like Adrian Peterson, though Marshawn Lynch, of course, has his recent injury history as well. I think Oakland, you're in a good spot to possibly get a running back, whether it'd probably most likely be McCaffrey, but who knows what we're going to have at the draft at this point. But nonetheless, you can, even if it's not any of the four guys that we've talked about, if it's someone later on the board, in the third, fourth round, day 2, day 3, you can still use it and have him become a part of the young nucleus that the Raiders have continued to form and now have gotten them to be one of the best teams in the NFL and possibly on the verge of becoming a Super Bowl contender. So trying to bring in a guy who, to me, I don't think is really all there mentally. I think he's just really in it for the fame and not for football per se. Marshawn Lynch, I'm not a big fan of his. Everybody knows that by now. So I just don't really see this working out for Oakland. I think they're better off just staying the young route, grabbing a running back or two in the draft and help them form that young nucleus that way around guys like Derek Carr and Amari Cooper, etc. I get maybe the offensive lineup would help things out. I'm not totally naive to that fact, but I just don't like the move for Oakland. I think if I'm a Raider fan, I'd rather go younger and go through the draft per se than trying to bring in a guy that's unretired, that's coming out of retirement and off the street, so to speak, that had some injury history in the past. And I, again, don't really think he's all there as far as being ready from a football standpoint. So
just real quick, I disagree. I don't think it's a PR move at all. I think it's really strictly a football move. It has nothing to do with them moving or anything like that. I think it's totally football centric. Brady McKenzie has done a great job evaluating talent, and even if we allow the point that Lynch is doing this just for selfish reasons and his own personal branding, who cares? He's productive, and as long as he produces, which he has in his entire career, I don't really care.
I guess, but then if he really is in that mindset, then if you're Oakland, I guess it really is only, I think it's only a 2-year deal that he's going to sign, but still, how can you count on him? We're talking about how can I count on you going forward with all these draft prospects.
Well, if he wants to do it for fame and fortune, he has to perform well to get notoriety and be talked about, right?
Right, but what I'm saying is once he gets that back, then is he going to go back off again, or is he going to continue? That's my point.
What do you mean by go off again?
So, let's say he has a big year this year for Oakland, and then he gets all this. He's back on the market. He's got his fame back. Then all of a sudden, I want to retire again, and I'm going to leave, and just leave Oakland stranded.
And if he does that, is that deal still worth it? Absolutely. If I get Marshawn Lynch
from his standpoint, yes, definitely from a personal standpoint, no question.
And from the team standpoint, if I get a running back who has a great year that I traded very little for, who cares? I mean, you're only really assuming Lynch is going to be a year-to-year guy just because of his age and his, he's got a lot of carries on him and stuff. So if I traded him for a running back and I got one great year out of him, then he left, it's still a win because I traded very little to get him. I didn't give him any money. He got $3.5 million. That's nothing.
I know, but
it's totally worth it. I hope he has a great year and then leaves. I'll be happy.
But it's still important for a young team like the Raiders, who are almost right there, to grab somebody, especially in a position that is deep in that draft, where you can grab one or two guys you can count on going forward, and not bring in a guy like Lynch, D-Jock.
Yeah. Next year's draft is going to be really good too. I'm just finishing my point. Next year's draft is going to be really good.
I got you. I mean, Matt, it's kind of a different scenario, but kind of like Terrell Owens came to the Eagles for 1 year. That 04 year, they went to the Super Bowl. So if that happens in Raider land, Marshall Lynch has 1 year to go.
Right, but T.O. at the time, though, was supposed to be a long-term thing. He was on an 8-year deal.
I got you, but I think Raiders fans would be happy with that. It comes for 1 year and goes, and they go Super Bowl. If you win a Super Bowl, or you make a deep playoff run, I think many teams and fan bases would be very happy with that they went for it. So.
Right, but again, that's still not a guarantee. Now, if it happens to be that way, well, then Oakland just happens to have won that risk. Again, this is a risk, and if it works out in their favor, then I'm happy for them. Happy go luck, whatever. The Raiders get something in their final couple of years in Oakland before they go to Vegas, and I'd be happy for that fan base. I'm just talking about for the team on field going forward. The fact that the running back class is even deeper, is deep again next year, Alex, like you mentioned. I think that just sells my point even further. That why bother just bringing a guy out of retirement off the street, whether he's in for it or not, and bringing a guy now this year, keep adding to it next year. To what already have an potent offense.
Why can't you draft a running back next year? You have Lynch this year, you draft a running back next year.
I'm saying draft one this year and next year. You might as well just keep that young core, the young nucleus going.
Well,
you don't have to draft one.
No, but also the thing is, Ray's probably evaluated. There's probably, let's see, would you rather have Marshawn Lynch or the running backs this year? I bet that Ray's probably evaluating. Okay, Lynch is probably better than all the people that we're going to draft this year. So let's just go for it and just take Lynch. All right.
I don't know. If I'm comparing Lynch to, let's say, my top two guys in McCaffrey or Fournette, I'd take my chances with McCaffrey or Fournette.
But Oakland's not going to get those guys. You can't compare him to guys that aren't going to be there. McCaffrey's going to be gone at 8. So you're comparing him to now, Dante Foreman and Kareem Hunt and, those guys. So, we can't compare him to guys that won't be there.
I don't know. I just feel like either way, bringing in a young guy.
What running backs that are going to be realistic options for Oakland, let's say round 2 and on, because running back's not going to be in play in round 1, would you take over Marshawn Lynch?
I haven't watched those guys, so I can't really put forth. But I'm still, just in terms of the overall process here, I still take a chance on some of those young guys too, especially when you already have a potent passing game and you have a good offensive line. So the theory would be those guys can have some success early on, and then you can keep adding to it the year after.
Well, two things to finish up the point. One, they can still draft a running back this year if they really wanted to. There's nothing stopping them.
And I think they will.
So, I don't know if they will or not. I'm leaning towards no, but they could. And then next year's class is really strong. They got the other LSU kid. They got Barkley from Penn State. Some people say that next year's running back class is going to be stronger than this year's class. So I think in the short term, the win-now mentality that Oakland is in, because like you said, they're right there. Let's add a guy that can help you win immediately behind one of the best offensive lines of football.
Well, certainly Saquon Barkley is someone to look out for next year. I haven't seen him in person this year. That guy's going to be something special to look out for come next year in the running back class. But next, guys, we're going to move on to the Washington Redskins. And when we kind of started rebranding the show a little bit, everyone knows that I now am a writer for Pro Football Spot, covering the Redskins a little bit. So I wanted to bring in some more Redskin coverage to the show. And I know we didn't get a chance to do that a whole lot last week with the draft show. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about them in depth and their draft plans. They're at pick 17, as we mentioned, and obviously they have needs at safety, inside linebacker, probably at edge rusher. But here's the number one question that's been talked about for a while now, for the whole offseason, just because of the instability there is at that position right now, and that's a quarterback. Kirk Cousins, again, brought back again on a franchise tender. Doesn't seem very happy with it right now. He wants a long-term deal. He wants to be on a team that wants him going forward, and it doesn't seem like him and the Redskins are on the same page right now. So if I'm the Redskins, guys, I'm finding a way. I think it's time to move on from Kirk Cousins and bring in a quarterback, and I know, Alex, you and I have talked about that too. I get the only problem is I'm not a big fan of this quarterback class, and I don't know if I necessarily take one in the first round unless you're trying to get a guy like a Mitch Trubisky or somebody like that, or Deshaun Watson, who I think might be the best quarterback in this class, and I had a piece about it on Pro Football Spot. So if they're going to take somebody, I think it's going to be Deshaun Watson somewhere in the first round. So let me ask you this, Alex, since I know you're kind of on my side here of things as far as quarterback going forward here for the Redskins. Who's a guy who you think, if you're Washington, you can try and take a shot on to maybe be your franchise guy going forward and work on a little bit here?
if you want to move on from Cousins, that's fine. I might agree with you, but you got to have a good plan. And it sounds like you're missing that second part, Petrillo, about who's your next guy. I think that Pat Mahomes might be the guy I would entertain. I'm going to steer this conversation away from Washington for a second. I apologize again, but one quarterback who, unfortunately for me, is now available is Trent Dilfer, who just got fired by ESPN as well.
Wow, he's gone too.
So did Jason Stark, if you're a baseball guy.
Wow.
To keep turning the conversation into ESPN talk, but I feel like there are not many Washington fans listening. Sorry, Catrillo.
We're trying to build it, though. It's okay. Maybe in the future.
Yeah. Good luck with that. I would look at Mahomes. But the important part is you want to get rid of Cousins, that's fine, but you got to have that plan of who your next guy is, and I think it's kind of what you're lacking, Catrillo.
It's just because the Redskins did to themselves, because I don't think anyone really knows what their future plan is right now based on this horrible offseason that they've had. But I guess if they're going to take a chance on somebody, I think it has to be one of these, we'll say, these 3-4 quarterbacks that we've talked about in the last couple weeks or so. I think Deshaun Watson is the best out of them all, and I think he could be available for the Redskins at 17. As it sounds like Mitch Trubisky is going to be the first quarterback that will go off the board somewhere probably inside the top 15, maybe even the top 10 now at this point. We'll see what happens tomorrow night. And I think Watson could be that second guy that goes. I know there's a lot of speculation with him to the Texans right now. Apparently they had a really good meeting, and we'll see maybe the Texans try and make a move to trade up and grab him. But I think Deshaun Watson could be somewhat of a fit in Washington now going forward. But D-Jock, let me get your thoughts now on this as far as, do you agree that the Redskins should move on from Kirk Cousins, and who's a quarterback you think you would have in mind for this year's class specifically?
No, I think they should stay with Kirk Cousins. I think he's a very good quarterback. I think they need definite defensive help. If they draft a quarterback in the middle, late rounds, I know Alex doesn't like doing that. Alex likes to draft a quarterback.
Why would you do it?
I'm not a fan of it either.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So I think they have definite clear needs on the defense. They're definitely in play. Like Conley, but before stuff came out, that could be maybe a possibility. The Redskins are that crazy to maybe take them, or maybe go with like a Hassan Reddick there also. That they also need a linebacker help. But also something if another key for Redskins, if any of those running backs fall, whether it's a Cook or Fournette, that's probably way too far, or like a Mixon or something, the Redskins could definitely be in play for a running back, whether it's with their first pick or a second pick. But if Dalvin Cook falls to them at 16, that could be a possibility for the Redskins. But I'm also of the ilk that you don't draft a quarterback till you need a quarterback. So I don't know. I don't see. They might draft a quarterback in the middle, late rounds. That's what teams tend to do that. But I don't think it's worth spending your first round pick on a quarterback.
I think I could see that happening, especially if they don't go with any of these guys we're talking about here in the first round. But running back is interesting, D-Jock, because they have a couple of guys that have shown signs of productivity, but then they haven't been totally consistent. I think the guy leading the way right now is probably Robert Kelly, the way he ended last year, but it seems to me it's still kind of unsettled a little bit as far as the standpoint there at running back. Hassan Reddick is an interesting name, too, because apparently there's rumors now that he can maybe even go in the top 10, which I think is a little bit over the top for him, though I think he can be a good player in this league. And it could, because you look at the linebacking core overall, inside linebacker is definitely the most dire of that spot in the field. But you look on the outside of things, Will Compton, his future is still kind of in doubt because he still hasn't signed that franchise tender. And the other side, you have a guy in Preston Smith who showed some flashes last year. He had that big game last year against Cincinnati in London that pretty much saved that game for the Redskins, and that ended in a tie. But then he had some of those inconsistencies. So overall, that's a spot at linebacker where you need help if you're the Redskins as well. So that would be an interesting take there. Let me go to you, Alex, on this while we're talking about linebackers here. Anybody on the board either at 17 or maybe day 2 that you think could be a good fit in Washington, and then we'll go safeties next.
Be interesting about Reddick if he's there. See him as off ball. Foster, if he were to circle back to them. Duke Riley from LSU is a really good athlete. Um, you know, Jared Davis is probably too high in the first round. I'm not going to be there in the second. Zach Cunningham from Vanderbilt could be a name to watch out for. Even one of these edge guys might be more of an inside player. Vince Beagle from Wisconsin, or Tyus Bowser from Houston. In my mock draft that I'm working on, I haven't taken Tyus Bowser at 49. I look at him as an edge guy, but you could kick him inside as well. So, some interest there. And, I don't know what they're going to do with Cravens. I don't know if Cravens will be more of a deep safety or that hybrid guy that could kind of supplant the linebacker spot. I'm not too keen on that. But there's options there for Washington.
Yeah,
so a heavy draft, though. I spent a lot of time on the front seven in my mock.
Yeah, it seems like Sua Cravens is going to be more of a hybrid type of guy from my understanding, but that's going to be interesting, too, just because of the injury that he's going to be coming off of this year for Washington. How about some safeties, Alex, besides obviously the big two that obviously should most likely be off the board by the time that the Redskins are on the clock? What else do you think about that?
Sure, it's a really good safety class. Excluding, Adams and Hooker, you have Josh Jones from NC State that I really like as a big hitter. Can be too over-aggressive at times, but, I think the potential's there. Marcus May from Florida. Marcus Williams from Utah is a free safety type who's got good range. He's not the best tackler. I want to see him be more aggressive in the alley, but, some people really like him as a first-round talent. One sleeper name that I think is going to go higher than people think is Justin Evans from Texas A&M. Kind of got a free safety build, about 190 pounds, 6 foot, but that strong safety mentality, that big hitter, that's a good athlete. That had a nice Senior Bowl week. That was when I first saw him. So that's a guy that, Tony Pauline from Draft Analyst is saying he could go late first round. I think he's going to be at least a mid-second round pick. Justin Evans that could be there for 49 for Washington.
All right, so we'll keep an eye on that for the Redskins coming up here. And before we start wrapping things up, guys, I know we didn't get a chance to do any sleepers overall last week during our draft show, so I'm going to start with D-Jock first. Anybody on your radar in particular that might be available, let's say late day 2, early day 3? Mike's off.
You there?
Like Alex, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My apologies. I mean, I mentioned last week the one guy I kind of had an eye out for was a running back from Wyoming, Brian Hill.
Yeah.
I also liked Chris Godwin from Penn State also. But other than that, I mean, it's a really deep draft. There's not many superstars or many, Hall of Fame type guys, I believe. I think it's a very deep draft. And then every year there's a couple of gems, but I really haven't been able to pinpoint anybody. I mean, the two guys from USC, this time last year were very highly regarded. Have kind of dropped off this year in Juju Schuster and Adoree Jackson. Those are guys that are probably, second, third, late round, second, third, fourth round picks. Those are guys that definitely make an impact and really haven't been talked about too much this year, but were all the rage last year.
Alex, any sleepers on your end?
Yeah, there's a good bit. Cornelder from the U, I like as a slot guy, special teamer, hair on fire kind of mentality. I appreciate the way that he plays. I think the depth in this class is really strong across the board. Joe Mathis from Washington, outside linebacker. I think that's the most physical edge of any outside linebacker in this class. He's not going to be a 10-plus sack kind of guy. He's very much powered, not a great athlete, but could be maybe a Tamba Ali type. Matt Collins from UNC, I've talked about how much I've liked him before. Special teams team and a vertical threat. Shaq Griffin from Central Florida, who's getting a lot of buzz lately.
I like him too.
Now, you mentioned him last week. I think the Steelers have shown interest in him as well, so we might have the Eagles and the Steelers competing for Shaq Griffin.
That would be very interesting.
Yeah. So did the Eagles bring him in for a visit? Do you know?
I think they did, but I think it was only one visit. I don't think there's some interest there, but not a whole lot.
Only have one visit to be brought in, so 1 out of 1. And then the last two names, Dalvin Tomlinson from Alabama. I like DJ Jones from Ole Miss. Similar, they're both kind of squatty those tackles, but light on their feet. I think have good football IQ. DeMonte Casey from San Diego State's a guy that I've been a fan of for a while since the Senior Bowl. And Blair Brown from Ohio. I don't know much about him, but I know some draft guys that I follow and respect talk a lot about Blair Brown 4.65 40, a 38-inch vert, 128 tackles last year for the Bobcats. So you got the measurables. He's a little undersized, like 5'11 and a half, but the production, and he could be maybe an early day 3 kind of guy.
I'm going to go one local Pennsylvania product here, guys, and that is Julian Davenport from Bucknell. I know we haven't talked a whole lot about the offensive line class. We know it's kind of down this year, but I think he's a guy that can give you good value sometime day 3. I think I put a late 4th-round grade on him. Guy that's extremely athletic. We talked about how long he is from the way he measured at the Combine, and he had a pretty productive, somewhat productive time down at the Senior Bowl in February. And I think a guy that is very athletic, quick off the ball. Obviously, we talked about the size being there. Just sometimes he gets caught standing up when in pass protection. Of course, you'll tendency to see that with a guy that's 6'7" or higher. You want to see him stay low throughout the entire play, keep knees bent, and keep that technique going all the way through. But it's a guy that can move and pull and get up the field quickly. Just you want to see him finish a little bit better as far as pass protection goes. So I think that's a guy to watch out for come day 3. Local product out here in Pennsylvania from Bucknell, Julian Davenport, 2-time captain as well. Really good guy to talk to. Great guy off the field. Has kept himself clean. Great character guy. So I think he'd be a good fit for anybody offensive tackle needy later on in this draft. So that will do it for this week's edition of the show. Guys, can't wait for Thursday night. Let's see what happens. Going to be interesting.
Yeah. Definitely. For a lot of trades in the first round, I think you're going to get that kind of craziness, unpredictability about where these quarterbacks are going to go.
Ryan, if you're the Eagles, of course, you hope that all these quarterbacks go early. So guys on the defensive side keep falling. D-Jock, we'll see you soon, and it should be a good time on Thursday.
Yeah, it should be great. No Eagles, but again, I'm broken record. This should be one of the most exciting drafts ever. There's so much uncertainty. A lot of guys going up and down. And a bunch of trades could happen. I will be definitely locked. I mean, I think the NFL did it great by moving the draft around. Philadelphia is a great place for it. Very central location.
Going to look great on the RPM steps. Can't wait to see it.
Yeah, that. But no, I think it's going to be an absolutely insane weekend. The NFL definitely got it right with Thursday with the first round, second, third round Friday, Saturday. NFL doing a great job.
So we'll see what happens beginning tomorrow night with the 2017 NFL Draft live from Philly. And remember, if you need all your draft needs, we still have last week's draft show pinned on our Twitter page, which is at FF Podcast 1. You can find all of the show archives, including this week's show, of course, at Football Friday now on YouTube. And make sure you follow us there. Alex is on Twitter at Alex_Kazora. D-Jock on Twitter at Tyler_DiGiacomo. I'm on Twitter at MCATLDN. Make sure you give us a follow throughout the weekend, of course, as we get ready for the 2017 NFL Draft. So for Alex Kazora and Tyler DiGiacomo, I'm Matt Catrillo. Thanks for listening to this week's edition of the Football Friday Podcast.